No, but quickly. So thank you everyone for joining us on this work happiness webinar. It's for all of us sitting here. I think we've all got our own experiences with happiness at work, and I've thought a lot about my own career and where I am now. And I'm not going to bore you with my experiences because I'm certainly not an expert. And we're very fortunate today to have some incredible panelists. And when I look at how we're going to run this session, it's going to be very authentic. It's going to be an open discussion from the panelists that we have. I ask that everyone sort of listening, if you do have any questions, then if you just put it in the chat box, and I'll read them out at the end. And we're going to have around 45 minutes discussing literally what is work happiness. And hopefully by the end of this, you can have some things that you can take away, whether that's for yourselves at home, whether that's for yourselves in your industries, or just little things that you can actually think about to make those steps in the right direction. And if we think about the current landscape of the working world at the moment, and life's a little bit tough. It's turning into winter. It's getting a bit colder. We've got to save a little bit of money for Christmas, and we've got to be spending all those presents, and all of these things we're sort of gonna talk about today. So I'm going to quickly introduce our panelists. So we have Kate Healey. So Kate is a law of attraction and happiness coach and the creator of Happiest You program. That's an online course which offers a proactive and preventive approach to mental health, and is available for organizations to implement for their employees. Kate had a very successful career in law and spent 25 years negotiating high-profile contracts for companies such as JP Morgan. But she has spent most of that time supported by the medication and hiding clinical depression. At 42, a serious blow to the head when the office ceiling fell down was what led to her career change. And now she helps other people transform how they feel about their own lives. So very big welcome to Kate. Thank you very much for joining this panel today.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we're on to Working Wonder. So we have Callie and Nick. And Working Wonder is a coaching and training consultancy on a mission to create work happiness for everyone. It was founded in 2019 by Callie and Nick, who are experienced business leaders, marketing and communication specialists, and certified career coaches. They're passionate about creating positive and inclusive working cultures and work with companies and individuals to identify business and team challenges, and then create coaching, training, and employer brand solutions that in turn drive innovation, creativity, productivity, and profitability. Working Wonder have been very generous. They're offering 45 minutes free consultations after this, if anyone wants to get in contact with them for their industries, or even on an individual basis. So please do get in contact. And with all the panelists that are here today, we'll send you out their information that you can learn a little bit more as well. And then we're on to People Like Us. So we have Shiraz, who is a co-founder. Shiraz is the co-founder of People Like Us, an award-winning non-profit that celebrates and supports professionals from underrepresented backgrounds in media and marcoms. I hope I'm saying that right. Shiraz is a passionate campaigner for equal pay for ethnic minority workers in the UK. And lastly, but not least, we have the brothers. So we have Amardeep and Gurmit. They're an award-winning designer, an honorary fellow at Brunei University, and the founder of Bros&Co, a sustainable product and service design company, which has scaled to just under 100 people in size within 2 years. They have helped enterprises transform their approach to global and planetary problems over the past 18 years. So that is the quick intro that we're going to give you on these guys, and I think we can all extend our thanks for them actually all joining today. So quickly, right, let's get cracking. So we've got 45 minutes of discussion, and I do hope that from the panelists, please do jump in with each other and ask questions off it if you want to, because I do want it to be nice and free-flowing. So we're going to start with a very simple yet complicated question to Working Wonder, and Nick and Callie, I'll leave this over to you. But why is work happiness important?
Thank you. Well, it's the topic of the conversation, so it's a good place to start. I wanted to also point out that a number of us are family-run businesses as well. The brothers try and out-twin Nick and I. They're not actually twins. Disclaimer, you can decide who's older and who's younger, but Nicola and I are twins, and then Shiraz works with his brother Darain as well, in terms of People Like Us. So there's a lot of brothers and sisters going on, and we all sort of work with each other as well, but That's work happiness in itself. But you know, if you're thinking about a simple equation, really, if people are happy at work, then they in turn create happy businesses, which in turn is obviously happy business means business success. And there's lots of data that backs this up, that if people are happy at work, then it impacts their creativity, their ability to problem solve, and their productivity threefold versus people who aren't happy at work. And, you know, if you think about it on a personal level, when you are in a room with people who are happy and there are positive energy in the room, ideas are much more free flowing. It welcomes other people to join the conversation because they don't have that fear of being talked down or anything like that. It just creates a different energy in the room for sharing ideas and learning. And I always think it's really good to compare it to what happens, and you know, we've all been there, when there's a negative energy in the room, and just thinking on a personal level how that makes you feel, in terms of it might stop you offering your opinion, or kind of, you know, make you a bit more you know, kind of like you revert back into yourself a little bit. So happiness is infectious. It's really good for people on a personal level. But like I said, there are, you know, by the fact that it enhances creativity, it enhances problem solving, and enhances productivity, this has a really positive effect on the bottom line, and it can increase profitability by about 20%. And then from a staff retention point of view, if people are happy at work, they're much more likely, they're 90% more likely, in fact, to recommend where they work. So obviously, we're going through a cost of living crisis, but we're also going through the great attrition at the moment. So the more business leaders and companies can do to create those positive and inclusive working cultures that are genuine, then the more likely in turn they're going to be able to retain talent. And the good thing about retaining talent is that you create an entire bank of cheerleaders who, you know, we've all had the conversations about, you know, how's your job going, or what's it like to work in so and so location or place, is that you then have these cheerleaders who go, this is a great place to work. And by and large, that talkability then helps attract talent too. So if you aren't sold on the karma thing, and it's good for your soul and, you know, happy people and positive energy, then there's a really solid business case for it as well.
That moves on actually very nicely to sort of our next question on how can companies create work happiness? And we'll go over to the brothers, because I think if we think of what Callie's just said, it's not one size fits all. There's different methods that everyone sort of uses and has their own purpose, I suppose. So over to you, the brothers.
We were just saying just beforehand that it's such a broad question, and I'm sure that we're not going to cover every aspect to it, and Callie just done a great job of so many different facets around that particular question. But Go and myself were thinking about it, where we just sort of drew up to basically two facets of that quite broad spectrum, and I know that's not going to be a necessarily complete answer, but something that's really pertinent to Bros&Co, and especially looking and reflecting on how we've been running not just this business, but our interactions for the last 18 years of our career, and how that's been really effective, and how we've seen that transition in business. So Gavin, I know you wanted to talk about relationships and responsibilities first, and then maybe I'll take the next one.
Okay, cool. So my view is very much a kind of story that I've had throughout my life, which is the thing that stayed with me throughout my whole career is actually the relationships that I've formed and the people that I've essentially brought in out of the business world, and actually are part of my family now in actual reality. Now, relationships and responsibility are the two kind of things that I always weigh up being very valuable in an organization. Now, you always want good relationships. If you go into an organization where the relationships that you have and you've formed are not good or not well formed, you struggle to put your ideas on the plate, and you struggle to bring your best self to work. Yeah. Whereas if the relationships are good, you actually don't feel like you're working anymore. And that's a very strange situation, and everyone's starting to nod because you've felt that in the past, where there's that one person or there's that one team that you just remember for your whole life. And what we've learned by opening our own organization was that we were able to magnetize all of those folks into one place. And it was simply because some of those relationships we've had in the past were so well formed that it actually broke the structure of the organization, and it goes across organizations. So I think relationships is a primary thing to being happy at work. And then the other part is responsibility. I'm a keen thinker around the more responsibility you can accumulate, the more purpose you have in that organization. Now, the responsibility could be limited to a product or a service. It could be limited to you managing a team. But the more responsibility that you accumulate, the more ownership you have of what you're doing. And not only that, other people recognize that you have that responsibility, and then they see you in that light too. So I think when you talk about it in the work context, the responsibility factor is a key thing or key measure that helps people identify their purpose. Yeah. Sorry, you got one point.
And there was a whole bunch of aspects that we were going to touch upon, like in things of culture and things like that. But the other thing that I think was quite pertinent was to make sure that, and I use this word employee very loosely, guys, because we don't normally say that anyone's really an employee of Bros&Co. We normally say that people work with us, not for us. Genuinely, that a language is so important. Just a bit of echo there. Sorry. Can you guys still hear that echo? Oh, okay, it's back now, so great. So, because language is so important to how you approach people and how you really see them within your organization. So with and not for is really important. So making them feel that they're part of that bigger picture is super important, because they're so, and especially when you start to scale. And I think we're starting to see, we've started to recognize it, and we're reflecting on that, and we're trying to correct it ourselves, where we're not necessarily, when we talk to our team members, we don't want to talk about what they're doing. We really want to ask them that, why you're doing it. So as soon as they understand the why, it becomes a lot more meaningful and gives them a lot more purpose in their day-to-day to say, okay, do you know what? I understand the mission, not necessarily this thing that I've been simple task that you told me what to do. So therefore the what becomes part of the why. And there's so often that people turn up every day and they're amazing at what they do. I think we're testament to the team. Everyone I believe has great teams that are saying, I think the reason why we are where we are today is purely because of working with amazing people, and Kelly was one of them at Karmarama, which was a fantastic piece of a fantastic experience when we were there. So understanding the why to understand the bigger picture is super important, and that develops trust, and trust is so fundamental with our relationships of human beings. Oh, and I think Nick, you're going to ask something as well. Please, you got your hand up. Please go ahead.
I was doing that polite thing of putting my hand up there, but I wanted you to carry on and finish first. So please do that. Then I'll say something. You made me think of something when you said that.
Not a problem at all. And because essentially the other thing that we've really seen as it's not a golden nugget, guys. I think it is common sense, and a lot of good ideas tend to be common sense, is that we try to, at least on a weekly or necessarily bi-weekly scale now, we actually have some time allocated to ourselves to actually ask people that work with us in Bros&Co what they think. Is so important because they are the bloodline of everything that we do. We are both a products and services company, and allow them to also help shape the company. Really make sure that they feel as if they're part of what we're trying to do. And people that know us really well, they know that we steal ideas everywhere, but because they're part of that metric, that we won't share and harbor these great ideas. Leaders tend to serve those that work with them, and I think that's the combination that we find works really, really well. And the sorts of ideas that people that work with us that say to us is so incredible. It really has sort of taken us leaps and bounds from where we thought we were going to be. The other thing, probably just to mention, is that happiness is infectious. So we've seen that as part of the personality. We've seen that as part of, it's really unusual to call a company that has a personality to it, but I truly believe Bros&Co has that. We often get referred to as the urban crew because there's a real sense of realism when it comes to identifying problem solving them and how we go about doing what we do. But that also anchors the question that if happiness is infectious, and then also sadness can also be that as well. So it's really about them protecting the team to make sure that you bring in the right type of people to protect it. And I'm going to shut up now.
I'm going to add to what you were saying about friendship at work. I'm trying to find the chat function on here, but for some reason it's not on my computer. The Harvard Business Review recently wrote an article about the importance of friendship at work, and there's some really good stats in there about how it impacts things like creativity and productivity. So I can share that afterwards.
That'd be amazing. And Nick,
I guess the thing I was going to say when the guys were talking was what jumped out at me with your culture in creating work happiness was communication. So what I heard from you is how you communicate, and I like the way that you don't call your people employees. You communicate to find how they're happy and give them the relationships and the responsibility. So that was just what I wanted to add.
I think if we listen to sort of what has just been said, we talk about almost being our authentic selves and being able to be that way at work. And some of us are fortunate that we're able to bring our authentic selves to work, and some of us aren't. And we've all been in situations where potentially we do act in a different way, or how we think people need to act, or to see how we're actually behaving. And if we look at the importance of diversity, we have Shiraz, who is an expert in this field and genuinely looks to help people going into industries. And what is the importance of diversity and bringing your true self to work? Can you just talk to us a little bit about that, please, Shiraz?
Absolutely. So just for the context of the listeners today, so our organisation celebrates and supports journalists and communications professionals from Black, Asian, mixed race, minority ethnic backgrounds. And just for, I suppose our industries are severely underrepresented, and people are quite underpaid and blah, blah, blah. And everyone on this call knows all the stats and this sort of horrific reality. But I suppose what has helped massively, particularly in our network, is people feeling like they have a place called home, and they feel that with us. And I think it's incredibly important because the amount of time we spent at work, like more so than our partners, our families, our friends, and absolutely everything. And I think it's so important to be able to bring your true self to work. I think the UK is incredibly diverse in a wonderful way, in so many different ways. And having that, as Callie sort of touched on earlier, it is great for business. There are countless sort of studies that show the true benefit there is. And I suppose a lot of these conversations really started much heavier in the workplace following the murder of George Floyd. And I suppose there are a lot of sort of key lessons there. And I sort of just wanted to pass on a couple of tangible things people could do right now. I appreciate there's lots of great business and HR leaders on the call, just based on the feedback we've had through people like us and just anecdotally what may or may not be useful. The first is, I suppose, is creating that open environment where people from all backgrounds feel they can contribute to the culture of an organization. I suppose, like the brothers were saying, this is a partnership. This is not someone working for you. This is a team, and the value is in our differences and what else we can bring to the table. Because in our industry, for example, someone could have a brand new lived experience you know nothing about, and we're trying to reach such a diverse UK. It's really important to have that. And I think people need to be able to contribute and make comments without the fear of repercussions. And I think that's incredibly important. The second point I would make is all around consistency. I touched on the murder of George Floyd. There's been lots of studies to sort of suggest that conversations around inclusivity and diversity in the workplace rely so much on tragedy, such as George Floyd, or for example, the racism faced by Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, and Jadon Sancho after the Euros final. I think what I would advise is there needs to be consistency. We can't just be reactive, or when inclusion is trendy, like we can't just do stuff on Pride Month or Black History Month. This needs to be consistent. And I think just as a lived experience, you can see through that. You know when something is genuine or not. And I think that's incredibly important. And I think just on that point, virtue signaling is a biggie. Like many of us saw, there were tons of black squares in the summer of 2020. But truly, what are people doing? Are you desperately trying to be part of the conversation and not fear of being left behind? Or are you actually being helpful? Are you being an ally? And that's incredibly important. And I suppose the final point I would like to touch on is management training. I suppose people from different backgrounds and different walks of life work in different ways. And I think it's important that managers and leaders in the company are trained to be able to understand that and sort of bring the best out of people and sort of tie people together. I think is incredibly important. So yeah, overall, I think you want to bring your full self, like Callie says. That's when you're going to do the best in your company.
Thank you, Shiraz. No, that's I think everyone listening to take a lot from that, from even the way we behave at home, to work, it's the consistency throughout our lives. And I think there's moments in our lives where we do slip up on things and we do say the wrong things. And some of the greatest experiences I've had actually about how I've learned is by friends that I've maybe made those mistakes with, actually just saying, Susannah, don't say it like that, or do this, or do you know how that's made me feel? And the feedback piece in that actually is how we give that information to people is also so important, because a lot of it is you want to tell people off, you want to shout, you want to tell them it's wrong, but I think the way forward for a lot of it, like Shiraz has said, is that the conversation behind it and people being willing to change and learn at the same time as well. And it's like with anything, if you're willing to change and if you're willing to listen, then you'll go so much further. So thank you very much for that great insight. Now, Kate, we're going to go over to you. And we all love to live in this ideological world where it's perfect all the time, but the truth is that it's not. And sometimes we're not happy at work, and sometimes life is a little bit tough. And just a bit of an insight, if you're not happy at work, what can you do about it, and what can companies do to support those people?
Okay, so I've been thinking about this from an individual perspective, first and foremost, because I want to be able to offer some really practical advice. And the first thing I would say is that if you're not happy at work, to go into what I call observation mode. Okay, so you take a step back and you look at the situation. And I'm not just talking about looking at the detail of what you perceive to be going wrong at work. Okay, I want you to take a step back and look at everything in your life and how all of the different areas can be influencing what you're bringing to work, right? So we have a tendency to blame extraneous factors when we're not feeling happy. It's a very natural thing to do. And the reason we do that is because it's easier for us to blame somebody else or something else than it is to take something inward. But actually, we can be really kind to ourselves when we do look inward and say, okay, so how might I be kind of contributing to what isn't going right in my life? My work being an easy target sometimes. You know, we spend a lot of time at work. We have challenges at work. Things can be very relentless at work because we're doing it every day. So it's very easy for our work to become a target for blame when we're not feeling happy. But fundamentally, if we're not feeling happy on the inside, okay, we're not going to be attracting the best experiences into our lives. Okay, so we could end up jumping from job to job, company to company, and not feeling any more happy than we might hope to. And that's just really that old adage, you know, that you take yourself with you. So on a practical note, one of the things we could do is really try to look at the positive aspects of our job and our work, because there always are positive aspects. And, you know, energy grows where our focus goes. So we can really help ourselves by doing that. We tend to think that life happens to us, but life really does happen through us. You know, it happens from us. We create what we're living. And that starts with what, you know, others have mentioned already. The brothers mentioned, you know, energy. Callie mentioned energy at the start. It's our emotions. It's the vibe that we're giving off. You know, and there is something called the law of entrainment, which basically says that the energy in a room will change to meet the strongest energy that's being put into a room. Okay, so that isn't the highest energy, it could be the lowest energy, but it will always happen. And that's called the law of entrainment. You know, it's very real. We are energetic beings, you know, with physical bodies. We tend to see ourselves as this kind of thing, you know, but actually we go so much beyond that. And that was what Callie mentioned about, you know, your soul needing to be happy and so forth. So when we take the time to do a really personal review, we can then assess, you know, whether we are happy with where we are in life, happy with what we've achieved, happy with who we're surrounding ourselves with, how we're spending our time. And then we can ask ourselves very, very honestly. We can get behind the stories that we tell ourselves, and we can say, you know, am I feeling true contentment? Am I feeling the ease and flow of life? Am I feeling joy? Okay, because fundamentally those things are necessary in order for us to feel happy, and work is one element of that. Yes, absolutely. But we can't have a happy ending to an unhappy journey. You know, life doesn't work like that. So we have to find a way to feel better along the way, not futuristically, which is very much can be the thing that we do with work. We say, you know, when I earn this much, I'm going to be happy. When I'm doing that job, I'm going to be happy. We have to look at the now. And so then after we've looked at all of that and we've kind of, you know, assessed our whole situation, then we can look at our work situation from a broader perspective, and we can say, okay, is the work that I'm doing really fulfilling me? Is it lighting me up inside? Because actually, we often don't give ourselves permission for that to be the case. You know, we think we have all these beliefs, in our system, and, you know, we believe that we come to work to make money. I mean, most people believe that we come to work to make money, but actually, you know, what if we believed that work was a thing that was supposed to uplift us? It was supposed to replenish us. It was supposed to make us feel good. And that, you know, money was a byproduct of the positive things we could put out into the world. You know, it's only our belief system making us think that that isn't a possibility. And if we are going to feel truly happy with our lives, then we're going to be spending a large proportion of our time doing what really lights us up. So, you know, if you're an artist and you're not painting, then there is an element of you, there's going to be a part of you that is feeling a sense of loss. And that loss is then emanating in your vibe, it's coming out, and you're bringing that into a room. So you really do need to get yourself into a position where you are properly honouring every aspect of you, and, you know, how that can influence your working life, I believe.
No, thank you. It's no, that makes complete sense. It's, I think if I look at my background, actually, look at me talking about me, what a shock. If I look at my background, the piece you say about I played an amateur sport my whole life where nothing was about money, actually, and thinking of that feeling and actually transferring it to work, has, being very open, has been a bit of a learning curve for me, because my whole goal during being an international athlete was to win, and to win was to stand on a podium with your friends having a really good time. But I would be wrong to say that I enjoyed every single day, because I didn't.
No.
I think if we sit here and think we're going to be motivated every single day, we're not. It's, for me, it's finding a way that the most successful people in life continue to keep on going even when it is hard, and we find the small wins. And something that I've learned, especially in the last sort of couple of months about myself, is that I shouldn't always put it on the big wins. I have to put it on the small wins as well. And that's something that I've been thinking about very recently, that I think, or I hope, that can probably transfer to a lot of people here as well. And if you think of, we're going to sort of go over, I'm going to go back to Working Wonder in a second, but if I think of, we can't really define happiness, can we? And one of the questions is going to be, what is happiness at work? But we can't define it, because for every single person it's very, very different. And I talk a lot when I do my talks about sort of finding your purpose, and the realization is for everyone that everyone's purpose is very different. And some people it will be about making money, some people it will be about, I want to make my best friends when I go to work, and it's having the sort of the being able to look at people and understand that everyone thinks and feels very different things. And that's just my very personal perspective about where I am at the moment. But Working Wonder, to Nick and Callie, I think all of us, we're not all capable of being vulnerable at work, and we have bosses sometimes that we're scared of. Mine are on this call, I'm not scared of them, don't worry. We have bosses that we're scared of, or you're worried about being judged. That's just the world that we live in. And what support systems are also out there for employees and businesses if they're not happy at work, if they're not fulfilling their potential? Is there a source anywhere else that they can go?
Yeah, it's it's interesting around the support systems, because back to a theme that has run from what everyone is saying is, if you look at everyone as individuals, you're having a diverse and inclusive workplace. When you think about support systems, everyone's version of work happiness is different. So every single one of us on this call, Callie and I are twins, and we have completely different ways of defining work happiness. Luckily, a lot of it is working together, but actually that whole definition of work happiness changes, you know, all the time. So support systems is a really interesting one, because you've almost got to offer a range, and I would say you've got to listen as much as you're giving the systems there. And I guess if you also look, lockdown taught us a lot, and you know, forgive me, I know lockdown was horrific for an awful lot of people, society, etc. If you look at it from a workplace cultural transformation point of view, so much happened in 3 years, and so much has evolved. You've got much more remote working cultures. You've got now a hybrid, or people just working in a different way, people reevaluating their lives for so many different things. So to the point of support systems is, people may need something completely different to what you've possibly been offering before. What we've certainly seen as a trend on the positive is that companies are investing a lot more in learning and development. And they're also investing a lot more in mental health provision as well. And the reason I'm saying that is then they are prepared to pay for third-party support to help individuals in that way. So this could really be, you know, making your employees and the people in your teams aware that you could have confidential one-to-one career coaching with a third party. I would say that I'm a career coach, but there are other things. You could have a counselling session with a trained therapist if your work happiness really is in the other way. You could have group training sessions. So I guess it's ensuring that the support systems, it could well be financial, you know, financial support. A lot of people are providing now cost of living top-up bonuses or support, or finances, recognizing that people may not be happy at work if they're worried about paying utility bills, or they're worried about the cost of living. So I guess a key for me is that it's have the support systems available, but acknowledge everyone may need something different, but just make people aware that you'll listen, that you'll be able to support them. I'm seeing a few hands up, so that's why I paused. I was going to let the bros speak, and Chris, I saw your hand up too.
I think Chris went first. Off to you, Chris.
I went first. Sorry, I'll be really quick because I will absorb all the time. So I'm lucky enough to work with Susannah, and I think the thing that we've learned through, and it's a really interesting point you make about lockdown, is that we as a business, we were cognizant of mental health, but we're a consulting firm. We charge pretty hard, and when you ask someone if they're okay, it's kind of in our culture to say, yeah, I'm fine, I'm absolutely fine, it's no problem at all. In fact, somewhere kind of, could you turn your attention to somewhere else, because it's really causing me anxiety now you've asked me whether I'm okay or not, and oh my god, I need to go and cry in a corner. What we've learned now is it's not enough to ask the question. So we've got a weird little triage thing in place that says, we're just reviewing at the moment, but at our peak we had 6 internal mental health first aiders, dead easy to go and do. That was on a self kind of application basis. We put it out to the company. Who feels they've got some capacity to take on more, they put their hands up, and then we put them through some training. And you could be careful kind of how you implement that. It's not as easy as saying, I'll be at 3 o'clock, I'll be in the glass office over in the corner over there if anybody wants to come and talk to me. Because of course everyone just goes, oh, glass office, coming to talk to people. I'm not going to go and do that. But once we'd worked out how we could make that worked well. Then we've implemented at a very reasonable price, I have to say, an employee assistance program. So that can help any one of our colleagues with a relationship issue, financial issue, the whole gamut really of problems that people face that they're not always comfortable talking with their line manager about, or even going to HR sometimes. And I'll be dead honest, because I asked the question of our people and culture team the other day in our meeting with them, how many people have accessed that in Q3? We're a company of about 220 odd people. and it's 40 people. And part of me wants to celebrate the fact that we've got that service for people, and part of me wants to cry and scoop them up into a bundle and do something about it directly. That, by the way, during lockdown, we had a 6-month period where the EAP, the line, the telephone line, was accessed over 800 times in 6 months. So it's, if anybody wants the details of it, it's such a de minimis cost, really. And then the final piece, this triage, is that we've instructed, and we've they're not a full-time employee of ours, but we've come to a partnership with it's a person who's a mental health nurse, who's also a coach, and we will now, and this is we go through a process with our HR team, and they work with a person that needs more support, but it's uncapped. There's no amount of money that we're not going to spend on it. And again, actually, and for the business owners of you out there, it's such a small investment, really, in the well-being of a workforce. And this person has worked with 18 of our staff over the last about year and a half. And today she works with 6. And that's totally discreet. I, as the chief executive, don't even know who they are. But it doesn't really matter as long as I know that they're being cared for and they're taken care of. And when the time is right and I need to make an intervention, then they ask me to go make an intervention. I go and speak to whomever it may be about whatever it is, and we work it out. So, sorry, Suzanne, I will bleat on, but I'll just leave it at that. But if anybody wants to talk about that, any questions about that, but I think that we'd have never had that before.
No.
Before COVID, there's no way. It just wasn't, embarrassingly, because I'm also, I'll put myself in the crosshairs here. I'm kind of 48, just about turned to 49. I was in the age where it was a badge of honor to sleep 3 hours a night because you're pushing that hard and all the rest of it. And I embarrass myself now because I now wear a Whoop band, a bit like Susannah does, and it tells me, oh, your sleep is wonderful. But it also, go easy on the beer because that ruins your sleep. It's a different thing. But so, we were honouring we were honouring the wrong things. So, but if anyone wants the information, I'll shut up. But it's been great. That's what I'm saying.
Chris, I think it's really great that you've adopted a programme that includes other aspects, not just work. I think that's really, really important, and that's why I included all the different aspects of life in the programme that I offer. And that, to give people an idea, is literally a couple of pounds a month. It's less than £2 a month per employee. So, like you say, it's a low cost for what can be really beneficial. I mean, I think that the fact that 40 people out of a 200 and something organisation have accessed that, I think that's brilliant, because one of the things that we tend to not realise is that we don't always know when we're not happy, which sounds really crazy, but we don't, because we do have this culture of just kind of getting on with things and pushing things down. And we also have a culture of not believing that we can achieve what we can achieve and we can do what, such great things. We have it kind of quashed out of us at very young ages, and so I think that the numbers that you're talking about are great, really.
Brothers, I'm conscious you had your hand up at one point.
I know we're running to time as well, so I'll be very, very quick.
Very good.
I just wanted to also mention that when we talk about structural support, it's also inherent in our working practices, right? So when you go into an organization, actually, let's step back away from business and let's talk about maybe running in a relay. When running in the relay, everyone's passing the baton to one another, but the only time it's valuable is at the end. So the goal has to justify all the pain everyone's going through. And I think the same also applies in the workplace. Is the goal that you're working towards going to justify the work that you have to put in to reach that goal? And it's really unlikely you're going to be doing all the work by yourself. You generally do it with other people as well. And what we've seen with some of the best teams is that there's structural integrity and support within the team, that the team actually support each other. So when we said responsibilities and relationships, the responsibility is where you know your part in the team and you know what you need to pick up. But the relationship part is when someone's really struggling, the rest of the team will support that person. And also the rest of the team may do it in and out of work, because the work is secondary. It's also about the person. So I do want to mention that, like, especially, like, let's take an example in agile ways of working. Agile Manifesto says the way that we quantify the value of the team is based upon how much code you release, which is at the end of the delivery cycle. So you're building a product, you go through research, design, and communications, and product builds, and et cetera. But the only time you're valued is at the end when the code is released. Now, that means the whole team has to come together to be able to get everything that's required to get that development done. Now, it's the same analogy as we had with the baton in a relay. But when you see some of the teams that we've had a chance to work with, you really see them come together when things are really coming under a lot of pressure, which is generally at the end of each quarter when there's big releases happening. That's when the team really come together. And it doesn't matter what leadership say at that point, whether leadership say, oh, we're disappointed with you, the team say, well, it's not about your leadership perspective. It's actually, we're disappointed with ourselves that we didn't meet that, or we're super happy we all met that, or we know how to support each other, we can deliver that. So I do want to mention that there's stuff that happens where an organization can support, but also we got to find support in the nature of work as well.
Yeah, there's a lot. Sorry, no. There's I think from all of the discussions that we're having, I know that when I listen to panels, there's maybe one or two things that I take, and whether that's in what we're saying or what you're saying, I think things relate to people in very different ways. And like I said earlier, I think of my life that has been quite privileged, actually, and privileged to a sense where people look at me and think it's privileged, but there's always things that aren't, actually. And I was part of a sport that genuinely didn't have a lot of inclusivity. There was no diversity really, and it's a tough thing to be in. And I was part of it, thinking as I got older, how can I help create that change? And I think of the moments in my life actually where things are going well, and rightly or wrongly actually, you don't think about it as much. And that's the position that someone like me is sometimes in when it's not affecting you. And I think I want to hear from Sheraz in a second, because if we look at how companies were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and how they are now, we'd like to think that it's changing. And with the work that you do, Sheraz, have you seen how it's changed in a positive way? And what's the advice that you can give companies in terms of when we do get busy, when numbers are trying to be hit, when things start to slide because you're trying to push and push and push to be successful? How do companies continue to have this at the forefront of their mind to create that inclusive environment where everyone can be themselves and be successful?
Yeah, I actually, Susannah, I didn't mention it before. I've played hockey for a long time.
Did you?
Yeah.
You'd be way better than me now.
Well, absolutely not. Yeah, you know what? You're right. Whilst the game wasn't inclusive, the game was very good to me. Everyone made me feel very welcome, which I feel very grateful about. And it's an interesting question. I think over time things have changed. People are starting to, I suppose, from a business point of view, benchmark things. Like, for example, pay disparities in terms of gender, ethnicity, sexuality. That became law in the UK in 2017. The gender pay gap, companies by law had to reveal it. And I think the progress over time, there is progress. I think perhaps not at the rate we'd like it to, but it is happening. And I suppose the thing businesses should remember is consistency is key. Like as I sort of touched on earlier, I think reacting when there's a big national moment or a big tragedy or it's trendy, people see through it. I think people talk. I think certainly in our industry, which is quite a small one where everyone knows each other, people that look like me talk to each other and say, actually, I had a bad experience at this organization, or do you mean I was treated unfairly in this way and whatever. I think, but I do see a lot of changes coming. I think people are taking it seriously in terms of being more inclusive, making sure people are much happier at work, and mental health is more of a priority. So I think we're definitely headed in the right direction.
If you're talking to someone who you're sort of prepping to go and work in an industry, and what's the advice you give them? Do you say, go in and be yourself, or go in and be aware that the landscape may not be sort of as you'd envisage it to be? How do you set someone up to almost be prepared for these situations where, and what, like we've already mentioned today, it's like role models. When you see someone or when you see people doing things that you can relate to, you tend to then strive for that success in what they're doing. And yeah, how do you prepare people to go into a work environment where potentially not everyone is dressed the same, maybe everyone's sexual orientation is different, all of those things? What's the advice you give those people that you're talking to?
I think mine always is, you have to be true to yourself. I think the moment you start becoming someone you're not, or I think there's always a degree of being a chameleon in any sort of work, corporate, team environment. Like, you obviously want to fit in and want to get on with everyone, but I think if you hold your values true to yourself, and it goes a long way. And I think sometimes it will be hard. I think there are so many industries. So, like, again, giving mine as an example, the challenge I had for a long time was there's nobody in the boardroom or senior that looked like me. And I thought, can I be this? Like, can I? And that's why we started People Like Us, is to show the rest of the industry, you too can flourish and thrive, and you deserve to, because you're brilliant, and it shouldn't be down to your color of your skin, your sexuality, your gender, or anything else. What I would say is, if you can, seek out a mentor. That's been a great help to me. Someone sort of having my back, being in my corner when I'm stuck or whatever. It's something we do a lot. We pair people up with someone senior in the industry, who's been around the block, knows their thing, and is happy to sort of be someone you can lean on. So I'd say finding a mentor helped me in a lot of ways, and I think it benefits a lot of people. And then there will be times where you feel alone and feel exhausted, and having someone to rely on, it makes a world of difference.
And I would say, to add to that, Shira, is about being true to yourself, and it's something I wish I'd been told earlier in my career. I mean, my experience is in advertising agencies, but even that knowledge that different companies have different cultures is really helpful to understand. So if there is an industry that you want to get into, seeking somebody, you know, like a lot of people say to us, oh, you know, I'm keen to switch industries, how do I find out more about it? You often find by reaching out to people on LinkedIn, or if you see somebody on Instagram and go, I'm really interested in this, but I'd like to understand more about it, or can I, a lot of the time people will give you their time. And if they don't, it's not because they're being idiots, it's because they genuinely don't have time. And then you go on to the next person. So I think the mentor point is a very good idea, but I think we can all continue to stretch our networks and better educate ourselves so that we can find working environments that will empower us to thrive.
No, that's very good advice. I think if I look at the situation, even for me, if I look at my bosses on the call, I go in as Susannah every day, and there's a picture of me the other day in my tracksuit because I went to the gym at lunch, and this isn't to do with any, and I told this story on sort of a briefing call the other week actually, and it's like sort of Shiraz say, we are chameleons to a sense, and I know the things in my life that makes me happy. I know the things that I need to do that make me happy. Do I always do them? No. Do I sometimes not do them because of social pressures of other things? Yes. And I was a stubborn kid. I'm a stubborn adult. So I tend to always still do what I want to do. However, the one thing that I've certainly seen, or from working, is that we all want to work hard. We all want to do more than the rest. And for me, I love to go to the gym at lunch. Do I feel a tiny bit of guilt for going to the gym at lunch? Yes, I do, because I think everyone else is at their desks having their lunch. Everyone else is here. Are they working harder than me? And it's that imposter syndrome in a way, because I've been someone that has been very good at what I was doing to now learning a whole new trade in a whole new environment. And actually, even for me, listening to this call, thinking my happiness at work, it's the feedback that I'm almost going to give myself is say to my bosses, do you know what, I have to go to the gym at lunch, or I have to go for a run at lunch, because you're going to get a far better Susannah for the afternoon. And actually, me being able to say that openly, which I'm very fortunate that I am, and I'm a confident person, but some people aren't. And because of the bosses that I have that will be receptive to it, it puts it in a better position for me to be able to do it. And And that's something that I think everyone should think about. Everyone should think, what makes them happy? What do they need to do in their working day? Do they need to go for a walk around the office, or change the scenery, or call their friend at break time? It's not school. At lunchtime, it's finding all of those simple things that actually do make a difference. And I'm still learning what that is.
But Susannah, I was going to add to that, and something that we do in a lot of our workshops is we get people talking about how they like to work. So I am my most confident when, I get my best ideas when, and and it's hilarious. Some people are like, get my best ideas in the shower, or I get my best ideas when I go for a run, and just being able to, one, do it for yourself. So you raise your own self-awareness of how you like to work, whether you're a morning person, whether you like being in a big room and having an audience, whether you're more introverted. Understanding about yourself. But I think the important bit then is communicating that to others, because by doing that, you give yourself permission to be yourself, but also you empower others to create scenarios to get the best out of you too. So I would encourage you to have that conversation as a team, so that then you can all give each other permission and work in that way.
Yeah, because you naturally do feel like you're being watched. It's at work, it's everywhere we go. And I think the more open and honest we can be without fear of judgment, actually, then the more comfortable we'll be able to be able to do it. And I'm someone that's able to do that, but I'm very aware that not everyone is. Sorry, Kate, you've got your hand up.
No, it was brilliant, because you've just said, what I was going to talk about was judgment. And actually, we touched on this the other day. Callie said something really, which I thought was just beautifully succinct, which is that there is this relationship in many companies, which is, from a transactional analysis perspective, it's very much a parent-child relationship as opposed to an adult-to-adult one. And I think that one of the things that lockdown did was it showed many people what it was like to have a taste of freedom around their working environment. And I think that one of the things that organizations can do, one of the things that HR directors can do, and CEOs, is kind of ensure that the people at the top of the organization are kind of fostering an environment of losing judgment, literally judgment, because judgment is where all of these kind of negativities come from, flowing through an organization. And judgment always comes inside of us from fear. And fear, often we don't even know where that fear is coming from. And this is why it's so important for the people at the top of organizations who are influencing the rest, are looking at having coaching, personal coaching, work coaching, what have you, and really kind of getting underneath what might be, and this is going to sound controversial now, but any need that they might have to be exerting control, control from an ego perspective, as opposed to enabling the employees, as the brothers touched on to start with, to really feel like they're not employees, but they are, equal partners in the running of a company, because it's the control that isn't necessary. It's based on fear, and it's keeping judgment in organizations, in my opinion. So.
Okay, I'm going to go to Nick. Chris, I'll come to you in a minute, even though you had your hand up first.
Oh, sorry, Chris. I feel bad now. I love the way he's on mute, but I think we all read what he was saying there. I was just going to add a sort of just a final observation that work happiness isn't just a buzzword. It's really here to stay. And I do think that companies now are recognizing, the smart companies are recognizing the direct correlation between happy employees and what is known as their employer brand, and how it links to their corporate reputation, the products and services that they offer, what their customers see as well. So I think companies are much more receptive to coming up with initiatives to ensure their employees are happy, because any of us who have worked in sort of agency client situations, is as a client I could always tell if my agency team weren't happy and didn't like where they worked. So don't be afraid to actively talk about work happiness if it's you as an individual, or if it's you as a company leader, or if it's you in a comms position, in a marketing position, because it should all be linked in terms of a company's corporate reputation and accountability, the same way that everyone is much more focused on purpose. I just think it's really worth remembering that. So that's just what I wanted to add.
Christopher.
Susannah. Right. So again, I'm conscious of time. I'm kind of seated in practicality, aren't I? So I think when I think about happiness, I think people leave companies because they become either disenfranchised or they feel excluded. I mean, there's lots of reasons why my person might leave the company, but I think over my time, those two things, or maybe your values jar. I think practically though, whenever we recruit into our business, we think very carefully about who are their friends going to be. So Alex is on my screen. If Alex was joining us, I'd be working really hard to seat him in a team where he's going to feel comfortable and he's going to get a full range of our business, whatever that looks like. Because I do think that friendship at work is super important. So, and when I think about people that we've lost over the years, it's kind of they'd lost the fun, they'd lost the friendships. Maybe it was somebody in a different business that had left, but at the Christmas party, they're always the ones that hung out with, really good laugh, and they shared an interest in whatever it was they shared an interest in. I think the biggest gift, though, as an employer that we can give is assurance and knowing where you stand. So if I'm in a relationship with my wife, my kids' relationship with me, my friends, whatever else, I think people need to know where they stand. And I think that's exactly the same when you work for a company. You need to know precisely where you stand. And that comes down to open and honest communication and regular intervention and asking what works for them, what makes them happy, where do they see their career progressing, and so on. And I don't think it's a risk for as an employer to say, what are your aspirations? I don't believe for 1 minute you're going to work the rest of your life for our company. So what is it you want to get out of your job here, along with money and experience and learning and development? And if you want to be, and this is a real story, if you want to start your own coffee shop up and you need £30,000 to be a barista and all the rest of it, well, as our journeys are aligned, you can learn some stuff with us, you can make some money, and then you can go off and flourish and do your own thing. But I think it takes a reasonably open business to do that, and you have to nurture that openness in the people that work with you. So I just encourage really open and honest communication. And someone might argue, oh, that seems like a lot of time. Do you know what? It's time well invested, because as a staffing and consulting firm, the cost of poor retention will break a business. So if you can keep people in your business engaged, open to communication. We've just tried a new bit of technology around our pulse surveys. We've had straight off the bat 76% engagement. That lights my heart up, because people feel that they can be open. I think the normal stats are about 60. So my point, not to ramble, is let people know, or give people the opportunity to talk about where they stand in the relationship with you as an employer, because I know lots of companies won't think of it as a relationship, but it is. And you spend so much of your time and your emotional energy around your colleagues and the business that you work in. You got to take it seriously, I think.
I would add just to that I think it's all about empowering managers to be the best managers that they can be, because I think you know a lot of the time people do leave because they have a bad manager. You might have the best boss in the world sit at the top, but if your manager on a daily basis isn't delivering and helping you and empowering you, and that's not to say, I also, sorry, in the same breath, everyone has to be accountable for their own career, right? And what happens next and all the rest of it. But I think if companies can focus, how can they create an amazing group of managers? I think that is when you really see that transition and that work happiness come through.
I'm very conscious of time and that I haven't allowed the floor to really ask any questions. If you've got a couple of minutes, if anyone does have any questions that they want to ask, please ask now or forever hold your peace. Nothing coming through. But look, we're going to thank you everyone for listening. I think we can all extend our thanks to the incredible panelists. If I look, oh, my mum's just joined. Hi, mum, it's just finished, mum.
Yeah, all along.
Okay.
Put my camera on.
Sorry. But we're going to send you all some information on everyone that's spoken and ways to get in touch with them as well, so you can learn a little bit more, and as you can with our company as well. But thank you very much. I think for me, I've even learned a lot about this subject, about myself, and things that I can do for others and the industry that I'm in as well. So a big thank you to everyone.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you, Susannah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for
Thank
having us.
you.
Bye,
See you
everyone.
again. Thank you.
Bye.